Pat Kelsey and the Louisville Cardinals have a chance to send a message both locally and nationally when 2024 five-star prospect Jayden Quaintance takes his official visit to Louisville at the end of this week. We'll discuss on today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Again, I want to tell you how thankful I am for all of those making Locked On Louisville podcast your first listen every day. Just a reminder, the show is free on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Basketball portal update. Well, actually, not yet. We will begin by discussing a five-star recruit, Jayden Quaintance, taking an official visit to Louisville this week, explaining how Louisville can send a message both locally and nationally. And then we get to portal talk. J'Vonne Hadley from Colorado. Is he the next Cardinals commit? I believe he will be. Aly Khalifa from BYU will be taking an official visit to the Cardinals. It's pretty notable. We'll explain why. Before we get into a lot of the basketball talk, I wanted to open the show by talking about some really heartbreaking and devastating news. Last week, good friend of mine, very good friend of the show, very popular Louisville fan, Ja'Cory, also known by Carito on social media, unfortunately passed away. And it has been really, really tough these past couple of days. Like I mentioned, he was a really good friend of mine. He was an outstanding father, brother, son, and an amazing Louisville fan and friend overall. He will be missed sincerely. Do want to tell a very, very quick story. When I launched this show back in August of 2021, it wasn't necessarily taking off the way I thought it should have. I was at a crossroads as to whether or not I wanted to continue to host the show. A couple months later in October, I met Carito at a Louisville football game, and he mentioned he was the first person ever to have voiced his public support of the Locked On Louisville podcast. And he told me in person just how much he enjoyed it and how he listened every day at work. And it was incredible to hear. And I believe it's one of the reasons why I continue to host this show today. Carito, you will be missed. And that is that's an understatement. So he coined the term, we watching or not. We're watching, man. We're watching your legacy be put on full display and see how many people loved you and how many people were really fond of you as both a friend and a Cardinal fan. So definitely hold your loved ones tight and be thankful for life in general. So to portal talk. Well, actually not to portal talk yet. We got to go to the high school ranks. John Calipari leaving Kentucky, we felt would have a ripple effect on Kentucky's roster and their recruiting class. And it's safe to say that we were correct. Their highest ranked signee, Jayden Quaintance, has been released out of his national letter of intent. Most believe that he was going to go to Arkansas. And although that still might be the case, Louisville is involved. He will be taking an official visit to the Cardinals program beginning on Thursday. And this is significant for a couple of different reasons. Number one, there is obviously legitimate interest. Now, two things. Number one, there has to be genuine interest from Quaintance's side. But number two, you would expect if Louisville is willing to invest their time and resources into recruiting JQ, that means that they feel like they have a legitimate chance at getting him to join the team. Not just a small chance that they hope that they can turn into a larger chance. They must feel like they have a concrete opportunity here to get Jayden onto campus. For those who don't know, Jayden Quaintance, 6'9", five-star, ranked as the 8th best player in the country, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, second best center, plays at the Word of God Christian Academy, where now Louisville assistant coach Thomas Carr was the athletic director when Quaintance was there in his early days in high school. So there is the obvious connection to the staff. The staff likes to recruit the North Carolina area. So you can see the connections between both parties. The interest seems to be there on both sides. The connection is there. The Cardinals have a chance to send a message. We begin locally. You think back, when was I'm trying to think of a legitimate time in which Louisville went up against Calipari in Kentucky and won a true head-to-head battle against the team down the road. Some people mentioned Shane Bohannon, but Kentucky backed off that recruitment sort of at the very end. I can't really remember a recruit that Louisville went toe-to-toe with Kentucky for a prospect that both of these schools desperately wanted and Louisville coming out on top. I don't remember a time when that happened in the Calipari era. Pat Kelsey has an opportunity to now say, look, I'm for real. Let me show you. Yes, getting Terrence Edwards was great, but let me go get a former Kentucky signee, their top signee in the class, and get him to commit to Louisville. That is what you consider to be sending a message. It would be a fantastic, not even really start, a fantastic continuation of the roster that he is building. And it would be key for next year's team. But you look at from the local side of things, man, this would send a message that we have not seen a Louisville coach send in quite some time. I mean, even when Rick Pitino was here on the recruiting trail, Louisville really didn't send a ton of messages. I mean, Pitino really didn't beat Calipari all that much anyway. Beat him in 2013, beat him in 2016. Now, at that time, those are the two wins that Pitino got over Calipari. It gives you an opportunity here to do something that hasn't been done in quite some time and to assure you that, hey, look, I know that we've been down, but we're going to bring this program back. And Pat Kelsey has a great opportunity to do that. It has the opportunity to sort of rejolt this rivalry. It hasn't been competitive since 2020. I mean, the Louisville has just not been good, and it has affected the rivalry. It's been very one-sided. It's been very one-sided for the past almost 2 decades. It's time for Louisville to try to get that pendulum swinging in the opposite direction. They can begin to try to revamp this rivalry by getting a commitment from Quaintance. So you have the local aspect of things. Also, from a national perspective, you have a chance to send a message because people are still sort of questioning whether or not, Pat Kelsey is the guy for the job. And until he gets some wins and losses, we won't know either. But he's gotten one commit, Terrence Edwards. And the Cardinals have been involved with multiple other commitment or multiple other recruits at this point, right? So we'll see in terms of what happens next. But getting Terrence Edwards was great, but the caliber of addition of getting a guy like Jayden Quaintance, who is a top 10 prospect, showing, oh, look, yeah, Louisville wasn't really all that good at the end of Chris Mack's tenure and Kenny Payne's tenure, but they just got Jayden Quaintance, and they're building a pretty important roster, a pretty impressive roster, I should say. Because Jayden Quaintance is one of the more talented prospects in the country, looking at sorry, I had to get back to the part. Adam Finkelstein, director of scouting for 24/7 Sports, says JQ is one of the most naturally talented prospects in the country. 6'9" with a 7'3" wingspan. He's extremely athletic, strong, being 6'9" and 230 pounds. Has a college-ready body, runs the floor well, solid motor, great rebounder. The potential for an outside scoring threat is there as well. His shot doesn't really have any issues mechanically. It's just a matter of refining that skill set and getting the reps in. I don't think he is like a Nikola Jokic type passer, but has shown upside as a creator for his team. Decent handle for his size as well. Great in the pick and roll game. And not to mention, I mean, Adam mentions it. Offensively, he has all the natural tools to be a huge mismatch threat. Right away, very, very good on the boards, solid around the rim, going to be really tough to defend. And I think that that's something that Louisville really needs. I mean, at this point, the Cardinals only have one front court member on the team at the moment. That is James Scott. And Quaintance would be a player that likely, in my opinion, probably starts right away. Another thing that makes this a very interesting situation is that he is currently 16, doesn't turn 17 until the summer. What does that mean? It means that due to the current NBA age requirements, he would have to stay at least 2 seasons in college basketball before he was able to go to the pros. So having that continuity would be huge for this program that's going to feature a lot of grad transfers this season and getting some multiple year guys, especially those of JQ's caliber, would be fantastic. So you have the local message it could send, the national message, the on-court sense it makes, the multiple years of the multiple seasons he would have to spend in college. And it makes sense that if I'm Louisville, I'm backing up the Brinks truck for this guy. I'm extremely interested to see his role in the collegiate level, but I think he has all the skills to be able to flourish in this offensive scheme. And you got to hope that Louisville can get a commitment right away. I would feel good if Louisville can get a commitment on the visit, but if he leaves Louisville without committing, it does make you feel like, not necessarily like a wasted chance, but you're not as confident as you were because he's going to be visiting other spots. I'm not sure if Arkansas is going to get in the mix, but if they do, they're obviously going to be pretty serious with the relationship with Coach Cal. It seems like at this point, there is some issues with how he communicated that he was leaving Kentucky is what I'm hearing, but nothing that I can confirm. But this is a huge opportunity to send a message both locally and nationally. But I think that the next Louisville commit is going to come from the transfer portal. We'll tell you what Colorado transfer J'Vonne Hadley can bring to this Louisville program here momentarily after we tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cardinal fans, it's Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Live on April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Javon Hadley was on campus just this weekend and has since been rumored to be a very, very heavy Louisville lean. He is down between the Cardinals and USC and will be making his decision on Tuesday. Common sense would tell you, coming off of a visit to Louisville, that Louisville would likely be the decision on Tuesday. Regardless, I think it is ultimately going to be the Cardinals that Hadley decides to go with. Hadley spent a couple of seasons already at Colorado, where he was a major part of the overall equation in Boulder, was a double-digit scorer this past season and significantly increased his numbers before that. Before spending 2 seasons at Colorado, he was actually playing at Northwestern, freshman there, didn't really get a lot of time, went to a community college, was a first-team All-American, and then transferred over to the Power 5, and since then has been fantastic. What would he bring to the Cardinals program? It's all centered around one thing, in my opinion, and that is versatility. He has versatility as a creator, as a passer, and as a defender. Hadley, 6'6", 205-pound native of St. Paul, Minnesota. Like I mentioned, statistically, 11.6 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists, 53% from the field, 41.7% from behind the arc, and 84% from the free throw line. Versatility is the name of the game for Hadley. He's a wing that is extremely crafty, can put the ball on the floor and attack the rim, smooth, getting to the basket, but also showed this past season that he's a respectable perimeter shooter. He ranked in the 82nd percentile nationally in catch and shoot situations, and more impressively, in spot-up situations, he ranked in the 97th percentile, one of the best players in the country in spot-up shooting situations. 41.7% from the three-point line. That was only on one attempt per game, but definitely improved those numbers. I'm not necessarily so sure that he's going to be a sharpshooter at Louisville, but he's going to be a player that can expand the floor and be a respectable shooter. But he's very, very creative. The versatility on offense, he can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. He can spot up. He can be proficient in catch and shoot situations. He operates a lot in transition. Very, very solid scoring in transition. Most of his offense comes around the rim. About 3/4 of his total shot attempts are in the paint, where he shoots 62%. So pretty efficient on decently sized volume numbers. 6'6", but plays a lot larger than that, uses that size to get downhill, very strong but agile as well. It's very interesting to me because he works a lot with his back to the basket. That's how you see his decently underrated post moves, but more importantly, the willingness to pass out of the high post and be a pretty solid passer. He's got a 12% assist rate. That is a trend that, once again, I mentioned Pat Kelsey sort of gravitating towards are players with an over 10% assist rate. What that means is they're solid passers, but maybe the assists aren't being shown in the box score because guys just aren't making shots. But pretty intuitive passer for his size. There's the creativity as a passer, creativity as a creator, and the versatility as a defender. Very switchable, can defend the 2 through the 4, which I mentioned this on a Twitter space on Sunday. Pat Kelsey's really never had a great defense as a head coach, and I think one thing he's trying to do to mitigate those defensive issues is to go and get very solid point of attack defenders. And I think J'Vonne Hadley sort of fits that bill, can switch the 2 through the 4 quick enough to guard the 2, but strong enough to guard the 4. I look at him as a 3, maybe a small ball 4 in some situations. I think ultimately he's going to be a starter at Louisville, starting alongside Terrence Edwards. Can be a complimentary ball handler. I'm not necessarily so sure that he's a primary or secondary, but with how Pat Kelsey runs his offensive schemes, you have to be able to pass, you have to be able to move without the ball, and it's very, very it's much more of a luxury if you can get downhill as well. Hadley is attentive to rebounding, 6 rebounds per game in the past 5 seasons. 4 of those 5 seasons, Pat Kelsey's offense is ranked in the top 20 in offensive rebounding percentage. So you start to see trends as to the type of player that Kelsey is going after, and Hadley makes a ton of sense. Michigan State was going after him. USC, obviously, some other programs were in the mix, but if you can get a Power 5 player that averaged double-digit scoring, solid defender, creative, versatile in many different ways, I think that a lot of what he brings to the table checks off a good amount of boxes for Pat Kelsey in terms of recruiting. This is a solid player on both ends of the court. So I'm really interested to see who Louisville would continue to go after guard-wise. Hadley has guard skills, can play the small ball 4. I wonder if we're going to see situations to where, having Edwards and Hadley both solid rebounders at 6'6", if you see both of them on the court, but it's more so in small ball situations where Hadley's playing more of the 4 rather than the 3 or the 2. I think that versatility gives Kelsey a lot of different opportunities and different looks that they can throw at defenses. So I'm really excited, hoping that he will commit. And if he does, then we will talk about it. If he doesn't, I'm going to look stupid. But he is making his commitment on Tuesday. I don't know about what time. Hopefully it is a reasonable time, and we can get an episode out talking about Hadley a little bit more as it relates to the University of Louisville. So, but there are a lot of moving parts. Many players having visited campus, visiting campus soon. One of those players is Aly Khalifa, who comes from BYU, where UK head coach Mark Pope was just coaching. He had a do not contact on his transfer portal entry, but is taking a visit to Louisville. Again, and we'll discuss why it's pretty interesting here coming up here momentarily after we tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs, slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. This next name we're going to talk about is very interesting because he put a do not contact order on his transfer portal entry, meaning that he wishes to not be contacted by programs, knowing where he's already going to go, or you think Mark Pope goes to Kentucky. But Aly Khalifa from BYU will be, at least we believe, making an official visit to Louisville on Thursday. The 6'11", 270-pound native of Alexandria, Egypt, spent 2 seasons at Charlotte, was a double-digit scorer in 2022-23, went to BYU, only averaged about 19 minutes per game, 5.7 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 38.6% from the field. I wonder about this. Number one, and I have been led to believe, I've seen multiple people say on social media that this isn't like a conspiracy, but there are a lot of people that believe that Khalifa visiting Louisville and ultimately, in their mind, committing to Kentucky is their way of manufacturing a recruiting win over Louisville. Saying, well, look what we did. They had him on campus and we still got a commitment from him. I don't know whether that's true or not. It has crossed my mind as being a possibility because how could it not? Because we've seen in the past players that are going to Kentucky include Louisville on their list, even though the Cardinals haven't really recruited said player all that heavily, and it optically looks like they chose Kentucky over the Cardinals. And we're wondering if that's going to be the case here, but it seems like there is legitimate interest from Louisville's side, and you would hope legitimate interest from Khalifa as well. I do wonder what his role would be. I think that this would be a depth add. If you're looking to bring him onto a starting role here at Louisville, I wonder. I don't necessarily know that he is a ACC starting caliber player, although he started 26 of the 29 games for a BYU team that was ranked in the Big 12 for a decent amount of the season. But he only played about 19.4 minutes per game, 5.7 points per game. His field goal percentage was 38.6%. For a big man, that is not good whatsoever, but a lot of his attempts came from the three-point line. He was a three-point shooter, literally a 6'11" guard, if you will, shooting a lot of three-point shots, but even then, on 3 attempts, shot 32% from 3. Not terrible, but for a guy that's not playing well around the rim, averaging 3.7 rebounds per game and being 6'11", 270, you wonder what the fit is in this system to where if you're not rebounding and you're not good around the rim, you're a decent three-point shooter. You lack the lateral quickness to be above average defender in the ACC, although he had a 3.2 block percentage rate, 0.6 blocks per game, but a 3.2% block rate, which is pretty solid. I guess maybe you say, well, he did decent for his for his minutes per game. And that might be true. And that's why I'm saying that I would welcome him on as a backup center or a backup forward. But if he's starting for Louisville, I question, how good the Cardinals are going to be in the front court, because he's an outside player. You don't have that 4-in, 1-out. You would legitimately be a 5-out team. And defensively, I wonder how Khalifa would do in the ACC. I'm just not so sure. But he is a very good passer. 4 assists per game for being 6'11", 270 is very solid. Some of the passes that he makes gives me Jokic or Alperen Şengün vibes. He is very intuitive as a passer, has solid vision, can see plays develop, gets the ball in the high post, and is able to distribute the ball really well. So I think that would make a lot of sense for a Pat Kelsey offense that is all about motion, getting the ball moving and creating open shots. But in terms of an offense with pace of play that's running up and down the court a lot, it's top 20 usually in pace per play. I mean, yeah, maybe he is a guy that fits some situations from a scheme perspective, but he, in my opinion, would be better suited as an option off the bench as a reserve. So I'm not necessarily so sure if Louisville is going to get his commitment. It seems like if he visits Kentucky, then, I mean, look, he played for Mark Pope. Something just doesn't feel right. And it might just me having PTSD about Kentucky taking recruits from Louisville that Louisville brings on visits and then clowning them optically. But can you blame us for feeling that way? Even if there is legitimate interest, it feels like we know where this one is headed. If Louisville loses a commitment from Khalifa, I don't think it's the end of the world. If you get a commitment, I'm not sure it raises the ceiling much. You add a solid player that's played a season in the Power 5. He wasn't terrible. Showed some flashes, 6 points per game, 4 assists, but he's got to be better rebounding the ball. Has to be better shooting overall. And if you can improve those numbers, then it would probably be a better addition. But he is going to be on campus on the 18th, along with some other players. Things are moving very quickly in the portal. Something that might be true on Monday might not be true on Tuesday. I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, is how fluid things are and how quickly things move. So I would caution everyone to not get too high, not get too low. Watch how Pat Kelsey, constructs this roster, and we'll see how things go moving forward. But I'm extremely interested to see 10 spots to go. Hopefully Louisville was able to get a commitment from J'Vonne Hadley on Tuesday, and we will discuss if that happens. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.